Okay, welcome to the Gooder Podcast. I am your host, Diana Frike. As partner and CMO of Retail Voodoo, an award-winning branding agency, I have met and worked with some of the most amazing women in the naturals industry, food, beverage, wellness, and fitness. As such, I've decided to create the Gooder Podcast to interview these great people and subject matter experts and have them share their insights, expertise, and to help businesses all around the world become gooder. I'm super excited to introduce my guest today, Ciara Dilley, Vice President of Marketing for FritoLay North America, who leads the company in ever evolving and diverse portfolio of the transform brands, including Stacy's, Sun Chips, Smart Foods, Popcorners, and Off the Eaten Path. She also oversees FritoLay's portfolio innovation and sustainability agenda. A seasoned veteran with more than 20 years of industry experience, Ciara's passion is supporting women both inside and outside of the walls of FritoLay, in addition to being personally involved in a number of initiatives that involve coaching and connecting businesswomen. She recently led the launch of Women Made, a PepsiCo initiative developed to advance female founders in the food and beverage industry through funding and exclusive mentoring program. Welcome. How is Texas today, right? You are in Texas, is that correct?
I am, Diana. Thank you so much for having me. I'm in Dallas. It's beautifully blue skies and sunny and warm. So where else would you want to be?
What's sunny? What's warm, I guess I would say. That's all relative, hey?
It's about 80 Fahrenheit, I think. I'm still in Celsius, given my European roots. So it's about 28 to 30. So I think that's about 80. It's beautiful.
So 80 is nice. That's good.
Yeah, not too hot, very, very doable, and nice to get out and about, so it's lovely.
And you have, how's the schooling going now? Your kids are in actual class, is that correct?
They are. I've got two boys down, and Matthew is 9, just turned 9, and Ewan is 10. So they were packed off to school by Mommy this morning, and we're all very happy. 3 weeks in, Mommy in particular, is very happy that everybody is back at school safe and sound.
We don't
into routine.
We don't have that, unfortunately. Our kids are in school from home or wherever. I send my kids off actually to my husband's office so that we don't have Wi-Fi issues. So they actually get to go to school without being at school. So
yeah, it's good to get them on the move. I think it's good to get them. There's a reason to get up in the morning. There's a reason to get dressed, eat a proper breakfast, and out the door. So I think they're finding that routine. We're all finding it good.
Yeah, good. Hey, so I originally reached out to you when I personally learned about this Stacy Rise project, and you were so kind and generous to agree to give me some time to tell me a little bit more about what you were doing with it. But before I go down the road of Stacy's project and what you're doing within PepsiCo FritoLay, why don't you share a little bit more about yourself? How did you get here and what's your story?
So yes, as you can probably tell by the very light accent that I still have, and I hail originally from Ireland, and I've been in the US for 5 years now. But before that, I guess I'm the eldest of 4 girls, which I think is important when you hear about my passion for supporting women later on. I think that definitely had an influence on me. My dad is a wonderful man and a very quiet man. He learned early on in life the secret to happiness was to let his girls have the run of the place and give them a voice, which he's always encouraged us to have. So I grew up in Ireland, and I actually studied law at college, but realized early on that it probably wasn't for me. And I started working for Diageo when I left college in marketing. I didn't know an awful lot about what marketing was, let me be honest, but I loved Diageo. I loved their brand building focus. I worked on amazing brands like Guinness and Budweiser, which was a franchise for us, and Smirnoff Vodka and Bailey's. Great brands. And I also worked for Campbell Soup, and I headed up marketing for the UK and Ireland. Great company, and I got a lot of commercial experience there, which is really important. It's important to understand these big customers like in Europe, Tesco or Aldi, Lidl, and understand the influence that they have and how to negotiate with them. Some tough lessons. I then worked for Kellogg, and I headed up their European innovation team. And that was a wonderful job as well, because that was all about how do we set the company up for the needs of the future. So healthier breakfast, a big push in Europe around how do we give healthier foods to our children, into our schools, etc. And Kellogg were really driving that hard. And we had a big role to play. And I actually had a team of 10 women. So we had a wonderful time. They're still great friends today. And then we decided, you know, the boys were young and decided it would be a great opportunity to travel, a good time to travel. And at that time, I had a good friend in PepsiCo who said, you know, we've got a global innovation role in New York. Would you like to come? And I loved doing the European role. So the idea of another multi-market role where you get to work with different countries and different cultures, and you learn that you have to listen and seek to understand, and where are we different and where are we similar is something that I loved doing. So I did global innovation for the snack side of the business, mainly focusing on Lay's for my first role in New York and Pepsi. And then I started to get more and more interested and involved in our healthier snacking growth agenda, leading brands like Sun Chips globally, and then doing a lot of work with entrepreneurs. And that's when that's a big start of my love for that area and my respect for the entrepreneurial world. And then I moved to FritoLay in Dallas, which is just the most amazing part of our business, because it's where the majority of our sales and profit happen for the world. And it's an amazing organization, which I'll talk to you about as we chat this morning. But a really wonderful team. And I'm just so lucky to work on our healthier snacking agenda and what we're trying to do in that area, as well as you mentioned, innovation and sustainable packaging and a few other things on the sideline.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So it's been a fun ride. You know, somebody said to me a few weeks ago, I did an interview with a Dallas magazine, and this lady said to me, did you ever think you'd end up, you know, coming from a small town in Ireland, did you ever think you'd end up here in Dallas working with the world's biggest snack company? I went, no, I definitely not think that's where my path would be, but I'm really, really enjoying it, and I consider myself very fortunate.
It's so funny. I'm listening to you, and this might feel a little bit sassy, but isn't it ironic that even at a multinational, at the level of leadership you are at, you are still carrying multiple siloed responsibilities, innovation, transform, you know, you can't even rise up the chain and shed a few of those things. You're still collecting them.
I actually think the higher up you go down, the more stuff you gather. The more
really?
They fill up your backpack. I feel like, you know, Dora the Explorer with her backpack sometime. Who knows what's going to come out of the backpack on any given day. But I know. Luckily, I love diversity. I love getting my finger in a lot of pies. And I do feel like a lot of the time, those pies interact with each other.
Yes.
Have a view across them. It actually helps you to get a lot more things done.
And I also think it helps the business. It helps any business, not just Frito-Lay, but it helps the business, because sometimes what happens when organizations get so big, they become siloed, and the one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing, and there's conflicting agendas. So I think what you're saying is it allows for there to be continuity between the efforts amongst the organization. Is that a good way to look at it?
Oh my gosh, I couldn't agree more with you. I think that silos drive me crazy because, as you said, they're so inefficient. They lead to using far too many resources, slow things down, etc. And I actually think some of the experience I have from my European role and the global role, where the role there was to bring things together, was to show markets that actually we can all work on one project together and get there quicker and make it better and bigger for everybody. So I also think, being Irish, when you come from a small country that doesn't have a lot of resources, you learn how to be very flexible and very resourceful. And you're very interested in, well, you know, let's just get a few things together to make something work. So I have a feeling a combination of those experiences helps me out as I go and try and seek to synergize and bring things together.
For sure. Okay, I can see that. Well, you do have this amazing title, Vice President of Transform Brand and Portfolio Innovation. I know this might seem like a silly question, but for some of the more mid-size or even smaller brand owners that might be listening, maybe you could talk about how they're the same and how they're the different, maybe how they interact with each other.
Totally. I mean, I think that the Transform Brand portfolio, as you mentioned, Anna, is what we call our healthier snacking brands. So
Gotcha.
We mentioned some of the lovely brands like a Smart Food popcorn, or an Off the Eaten Path veggie chip, or a popcorn, or a Bear fruit snack. A lot of brands that people don't even realize Frito has, which some days is a good thing. And we're very much the smaller brands in the organization. We are scrappier, we're looking to grow, we have so much runway, so much growth potential. And I think within that, innovation plays a big role within it, because a lot of the time the way to grow these brands is by innovating. is by bringing out new flavors or new products. So there's just incredible synergy when you're a smaller brand, you're seeking to grow, and innovation can be one of the levers that you pull. So for me, the two work very nicely together. Also, I think I always say that innovation is like having your own little business. It's like you're the
Yes.
general manager of your own business. Just like if you're working on your own business, like many of your listeners, or a small brand, you have to know everything. And I think that makes you a better business person. So I think the skills for growing a small brand and being an innovation leader are very, very similar.
That's very interesting. You know, I interviewed Janet Lee, who I believe worked indirectly with you, or maybe even directly for you a few weeks ago. And
I don't believe that. She's a wonderful lady. I worked with her in Europe. A lovely, lovely lady.
She's pretty great, and she has a similar mindset. I'm curious if that's just more kindred spirits in the business, or if your influence, you may not even know. I know that you, and we'll be talking about this in a little while somehow, but I know that you pride yourself in being able to influence the people that you work with in the organization, and kind of get people moving in a very powerful and positive direction. So I don't know if she was swept in with that, or if she already came with that mindset or anything, but I just thought that the mindset was awesome.
Yes, I'm thrilled to hear you talk to Janet. She's a wonderful lady. And I think, yes, people who are passionate about small brands and about innovating, as I said, tend to have very similar approaches. You have to be entrepreneurial, you have to be scrappy, you have to understand all areas of the business. Like, you can't just sit in an ivory tower and come up with lovely brand marketing ideas. You have to know, well, what does the consumer think of that? What does the retailer think of it? Can I make it? Can I make it and make money on it? And I think that makes you a better, whatever your specialist, it makes you a better marketer. It makes you a better supply chain or a finance expert when you understand the 360 of the business. And it's interesting because in both of these areas, when I was only talking about this to our Bear team this morning, I highly encourage my team to think of their brands as their own business. And I always say to them, it isn't your money. When you go to spend, whether it's marketing money or whether you go to launch a new innovation and take up resources from your team, stop and think, would you do this if it was your business? Would you invest this money? Would you pull on this resource if it was your business? And I just think it makes for much, much better business decisions, and ultimately, I think the right decisions for the brand. So I think that business ownership mindset is incredibly similar for healthy snacking smaller brands as well as for innovators.
Okay. Well, so we're talking innovation here, and you mentioned it in that it's been I don't know if it's a key competency or responsibility, but I see innovation as being an important part of your job history. Is it just something that you're excited about? Is that part of your DNA? Is that coming up with a big idea, coming up with products?
It's so interesting, Diana, because as I said at the start, I sort of fell into marketing from law school, and then I fell into innovation almost when Kellogg rang and said, we have this head of innovation for Europe role. And typical probably female in me went, I can't do that. I've never specialized in innovation before, but I fell in love with it. And I think it's for two reasons. One is the part you mentioned about innovation is a lifeblood of most consumer-facing companies.
Yes.
Consumers want to get excited and engaged about new ideas and new things, and innovation can bring that through. And sometimes it's massive, big breakthrough ideas like a new brand or a whole new platform. But also, it can also be the simpler things. It can be things that just excite consumers, like flavors, or on Smart Food Popcorn at the moment, we've just done a fun Cap'n Crunch summer berries line, and now we're doing a fall seasonal flavors. And consumers just love that because it gives a little bit of excitement in what's sometimes a dull and boring sector or a boring shopping trip. So I think there's many things that, there's many types of innovation that I love to work on. But I do also think that it is, it's one of those things that if you are 360 business minded, if you like to see the whole picture, like we talked about, not working in silos, working with different functions, having a holistic business approach, I think it works really, really, it suits me. It suits my skill set because I love how the whole thing comes together. And I also think, for small business owners out there, innovation is so critically important for how they grow their business. Most of them will have turned up with an innovative idea, I'm sure. If you launch your own new company, you believe that you're bringing something new and distinctive to the marketplace. I do think the watch out is, though, that there is a danger you can overuse innovation.
Mm-hmm.
We know that on some of our brands, 80% of our sales goes through one format, not multiple, so off the eaten path. 80% of our sales is our crisp. We have a lovely puff as well, but much, much smaller.
Sure.
So I think you also have to be very choiceful as you innovate as a small company as to what's the right pace, what's the consumer ready for, how much do you need over a certain period of time. Sometimes actually the growth comes from just focusing on what you do brilliantly in your original product. So I think it's also you have to be very strategic about innovation and not get too swept up in the excitement of it and the sexiness of it almost, and make sure you're doing it for the right reasons at the right time.
Yeah. You say so much about innovation that I hadn't really considered, but even the mindset, the person that appreciates innovation or thrives off of innovation is really that person that likes to see the business in a more holistic way. And I'm thinking to all the people that I've worked with before that are that have innovation as part of the responsibility. It's absolutely true. These are the people, some of the smartest people ever, not because they have a subject matter expertise here, but because they have they can see things from 30,000 feet. And this is a very, very great insight I hadn't even considered.
And what's interesting on that one as well, Dan, is I've worked with, because in innovation, you work with so many different people. Often you work with the most blue sky, progressive, design-led agency thinkers. And then you work with the guy in the factory who's trying to help you work out, how do we engineer this product? How do we make it happen? And the thing I always find fascinating is that it's super important to bridge that gap.
Absolutely.
And sometimes my biggest frustrations are when I'm working with the uber creative, and that's their job.
Yes.
But if they can't see at least a glimpse into how the idea comes to life, all the great thinking in the world will never get it out into the marketplace. So I think that's why I think it's so important to have that mix of people, but also to have people who are humble enough. And I think great innovators are humble enough to understand my ideas aren't worth anything, the paper they're written on or drawn on, unless they can come to life in the marketplace. And that's what's exciting, because in between there's loads of problem solving and creativity in enabling these things to come to life in the marketplace. So I think that's why it's a fun place to work.
Yeah, and you get a lot of organizational buy-in too when you bring those collective groups together. When our team is when we're involved in innovation workshops, organizations are typically perplexed when we say, okay, we'd like somebody from sales represented, somebody from operations represented. We would like all of these, everybody that would touch innovation involved. And half the time the people who aren't typically involved are a little bit bent out of shape. They don't understand. That's not my area of expertise. And you come out of this workshop after 3 or 4 days and they're bought in to the innovation. First of all, there's no need to sell them because they've been there through this kind of genesis process. But then a lot of the hurdles that you run into after you come up with the big idea have already been discussed in the room at the same time. There's a cost and time savings. It's really a really great way to, kind of move something forward actually quickly and cost effectively, but it doesn't seem so in the moment, particularly if you're an organization that's not done it that way before. Exactly.
And another thought that comes to mind as I hear you talk about that is there's also a lot of opportunity for co-creation with retail partners. Because we're finding more and more that retailers are saying to us, bring the innovation sooner. Let us see it sooner. Let us give input into what you're developing much earlier on, because there is nothing worse than us getting to a finished product and, rocking up to a Target or a Publix or a Walmart and going, da-da! And they're like, really? Like, really? And we've wasted all this time and resource. So I think, particularly for small businesses, I think if you've got some great partners, maybe more in the natural channel, etc., I have heard so much from the retailers saying, get us involved earlier. We would like to be your support, your insight, your eyes and ears as to how to make this happen. So I think that's an important angle as well.
So kind of moving a little bit down more that path then, now specifically at FritoLay, is there something in the FritoLay environment that that is different and more exciting than what you came from? Is it the size of the organization that allows you to just have more opportunities? Or?
You know what I love about Frito, Dana, from everywhere I've worked in the past, is Frito is an incredibly large and successful organization, but it is the most humble place I've ever worked.
Really?
People there sweat every single bag of chips that we sell, and they feel personally engaged in the wins and the responsibility they have to the organization, to their shareholders, to employees, and to their own colleagues and families. It is truly like a family business where people really believe in what the organization is trying to do, and they take very seriously the role that they play in making it happen, which is wonderful. So what that brings is an incredibly agile way of working, an incredibly hungry, incredibly humble, and a real spark, a real sort of, if you come up with a good idea and you want to make it happen, you can make it happen. Sometimes our only challenge is we have too many good ideas, and it's like, how do you focus? How do you prioritize? But it is an organization that can do, make it happen. We can make a difference. And that's not just, of course, it's very much about the sales and the products and how much we sell and how much profit. But there is a beautiful side to that is very much around the people, the employees, the shareholders, and the community. It's an organization, as you mentioned at the start, I'm based in Dallas, and the work that the team do in Dallas and the community in Dallas, and then our teams all over the US in their own communities, just incredible. It just blows my mind, the goodwill of the people in the company. So there is a special magic about the place that really inspires me and makes me want to do more and do better every day.
Well, I'm like listening to all of this, you've got your innovation background, you're in this kind of humble, we can do it, we can make an impact organization. And then we see things like Stacy's project and Women Made kind of pop up out of that organization. Are these the kinds of initiatives that you envisioned, or are they the types of ways that you guys are making that impact beyond the product, beyond the shareholder?
Absolutely, and like there are oodles of them. We have a PepsiCo Foundation that does amazing work. We have a Food for Good team that focuses on, underprivileged families and particularly supporting children across America. Amazing, amazing initiatives. These ones, so the Woman Made and the Rise, are very much around our diversity agenda. And they've come very much from a desire, almost a multifaceted desire, Dana. One was to really work out, how do we recruit and retain more women into our organization? It's a challenge I think every company globally has, and no more so in the US at the moment. But we also wanted to make sure that, how do we as an organization support women in the community? And then finally, we realized that, more and more consumers are saying to us, we want you as a company and as a brand to show up and have a voice and have a statement. Our trust in some of the more established institutions has waned over many years, and we believe you should use your voice for some good. So as you look at those three areas of society, of community, and of our internal employees and of our brands, these two initiatives came up, and they're very intertwined. Woman Made is very much around, how do we stand as an organization and bring together as many of the initiatives we can that support the economic empowerment of women, particularly focused on small business owners. And we have a number of initiatives corporately, through procurement, through supply, through communities, where we do that. And Woman Made is how we show up just with one voice to make the noise, make more and more noise to support these women. And then Stacy's Rise is very similar, but it's done with a brand lens. So it's very much, Stacy Madison was the founder. She was an amazing woman. She's still involved in the brand to this day. She's super proud of the work on the program. And it's very much about, how do we as a brand that sells in supermarkets every day across America, how do we use our brand and our product and our voice to support female founders? So a lot of integration between the two.
It seems like they work together from the quick research that I've done out there. They kind of feed into each other quite naturally, and it's intentional that way, correct?
Totally. I mean, the reason there are two programs, and some people say, why do you have two? Is one is Woman Made is more bringing together our broader corporate initiatives, which a brand couldn't really do, because if we were doing it, for example, we might have a government policy that we're working with to support more female business owners.
Gotcha.
That wouldn't naturally fit with a brand, for example, versus the Stacy's brand can do more on the ground. But the theory behind it, a lot of our partners are common. So we work with a wonderful company called Hello Alice, and Hello Alice they host the Woman Made information resources on their online platform, but they also are our key source for when we run our Rise competition every year, helping us to adjudicate, helping us find the founders, helping us devise the right resources and programs, etc. So there's a lot of synergies going on between the two.
Great. I just like that. I know when I reached out to you specifically, it was about Stacy's project. And when we were talking, I was giving you this like not so secret mission, was not just to raise the visibility and give a platform to just women, but that I had a particular interest to raise the awareness of women of color, BIPOC, LGBTQ, and disabled women leaders who are mostly not visible, particularly in CPG conversations. But then also, I hate to pick on it because I work in this very specific part, but in the naturals industry or the better for you categories, they're mostly invisible. And so when I saw Stacy's project, I was excited. I was just excited about that it existed and that it was coming from, I'm going to quote unquote, the bad guys, as the naturals industry sometimes pits the multi, we lump all the multinationals as quote the bad guys because it's the way it works in business. But it was just so exciting for me. And I thought, okay, I just want to learn more about it and why you were particularly excited about that.
Yes, I mean, I think you've hit on a few interesting points, Dan, but let me touch on them and then bring them together.
Yes.
The statistic that is out there at the moment that I think we might be almost at 3% now of VC funding going to small businesses owned by women is just horrifying. I mean, it's horrifying. Every time I say it, I still have to stop myself because I'm so horrified. In the US in 2020, I mean, it's disgraceful. And I use that word purposefully. And the fact that of that 2%, 0.2% goes to women of color is even more horrifying. And particularly when you look at what's happening in society at the moment. So there is a very real tension that we are putting front and foremost at the heart of this program. This isn't about doing a nice brand program to make us feel good. This is about that tension frustrates and horrifies and angers us as a company and as a team, and we want to make a difference. I think the other element, which I've come newly to the party, a bit like you talked about, is the area of how that then shows up in the naturals industry, particularly in food and beverage. And this was something that, again, it's so important when we get involved in these programs as large organizations to seek to learn and be humble enough to know that whilst we may not have all the data, we must understand it as best as we can to ensure that when we show up, we're bringing the right initiatives. So I got more and more engaged in what was going on in the natural industry.
Yeah.
And it did surprise me, like you, Diana, because I think in some ways from the outside, you would have this view that the naturals industry would be much better at this area because isn't it more progressive, and isn't it more on the coast, and isn't it more open to societal issues and challenges? And as you say, when you look under the hood, that's not necessarily the case. And one of the interesting groups I've come in contact with, and again, we're trying to weave our work in with, is a group called the Jedi Collaborative.
Oh.
They've been set up by an amazing group of people, men and women, who are incredibly engaged in changing the face of the naturals industry and making it more diverse and more inclusive. And I'm very lucky to be on that foundation, that partner group, as we seek to do that, because I think that is a very important agenda. And then that actually translates very nicely into one of the criteria we have as we choose our participants in the RISE program and in Woman Made, is that they are contributing to society in a positive way. By the way, that's easy to find with women, because all women, all the businesses we come into contact with are doing it. They're just amazing. And almost they're doing it without even realizing they're doing it, because they just know it's the right thing to do. So I think that angle is super interesting. The more we can support these female businesses, the more good they will do, and the more they will change the face, not only of the naturals industry, but indeed of how businesses show up today, because they all have things like sustainability, giving back, and diversity at the heart of what they do. So I think that there is, we're learning more about how all of these things come together, how horrifying the stats are, but yet how with supporting and leading into the right areas, we can make a difference.
Yes. Yeah. The Jedi Collaborative, are they involved in the potluck? There's a potluck.
Potluck is another initiative. No. So I think it's an independent initiative set up by a group of from a particular university, because some of my own colleagues are involved, and we've been sharing it out with particularly our employees of color and saying, this is a great resource, get involved here as well.
Yeah. And if we were to say, like, I mean, I think you've touched on a number of things within the Stacy's Rise. Would you guys call it the Rise Project internally now?
Yeah, Rise, Stacy's Rise, yeah.
Is there like the one stated mission that Stacy's is about? We talked about a number of initiatives, but what's like the single stated goal of it?
I mean, our focus is very much on supporting female founders to grow their businesses. That's very much our heart. And we do it in 3 ways. We do it through mentorship, we do it through financial support, and we do it through provision of expert advice. Because through our years of working in this space and with these groups and with these women, we've learned from them. They are the 3 areas that are, 1, most important, but 2 are often the hardest to gain access to.
For sure. Do you have a secret goal or a secret wish of the program? I know there's the stated business, but does Ciara have a specific, I hope this happens, or I hope it has this kind of impact?
Yes, I mean, there's 2 for me. One is I passionately believe that by supporting more women to grow their businesses and become economically empowered, our society, our communities, the world will be a better place. I've learned a lot from the amazing Melinda Gates, who's written the most wonderful book, which is all based around that theory. When women are empowered, they can change the world, and they do. So that's mine. Like I truly believe in that, and every step we take, I think, is towards that goal is super important. The other area I have, though, my other secret goal, is around how we engage and excite our internal teams around this initiative, because we talk a lot nowadays about recruitment and retention of the best people. We talk a lot about how hard it is to get the younger generation. We talk a lot about how people want more from their jobs, and in particular, they seek more purpose. And that's what makes them loyal nowadays, and that makes them stay, and indeed that makes them deliver the best work of their lives. So I really believe, having seen how we use and harness our employees as part of the program, that excites them, it engages them. They're so proud. They're so proud to bring their knowledge and expertise. They're so proud that their company is doing this. It makes them feel part of something bigger when they're sitting there scratching their heads going, how do I make a difference? Like, these big societal problems, they feel so big and so daunting. How can I show up? And if I can use initiatives like this to give them an opportunity to do this type of work and make a change, it's amazing, Diana. You should see what our teams put in above and beyond the ask every single time to support these women. They become so personally engaged with the women and their businesses and their stories. I have stories of people who've redesigned packaging, who have introduced them to Kroger buyers, who've introduced them to Amazon, who have, gone out into stores with these women for days on end to help them understand the retail environment. People, every time I ask somebody, I've got a female founder, she's having a problem in this area. Yes, yes, yes. Our people say yes all the time. So that's the second area that I personally believe will have just a massively positive impact on our company and on our employees.
I wish I could be like more intimately involved in that. That's just like the energy inside of me. Like, I'm naturally, it's probably a lot of you too. Like, you just exude this passion, and it's really easy to just be like, okay, whatever you want, just call me.
I can't say no to Ciara. I can't say no.
I wanted to say something about this, and we talked about this in our prep call. I don't have this necessarily in my notes, and so I wonder if you can answer this. The reason, there was something that struck me is so powerful about being at FritoLay you choosing to be at a multinational versus going to, say, a founder owner startup and doing the same work there. And what I'm hearing from you saying is these employees here internally want to be passionate about what they're doing, but here they are at Frito. I'm just going to say, here they are at Frito-Lay, right? The rest of the world is seeing Frito-Lay, who've never worked there. They just see Frito-Lay as a multinational. And there was something very specific that you said, and I don't know if you remember it, that why you're at Frito-Lay versus somewhere else. Maybe you could articulate that a little bit more. Or
I'd love to, and I can remember no problem, Diana, because I think I say it every second day of my life when I'm talking to people, because I use that story to try and encourage and excite others within the company that you can make a massive difference despite or because you work for such a big corporate. So
yes.
It comes back to the story I tell, and my team have heard it so many times, is I was doing a talk one time for our global supply chain, and I was telling them about this entrepreneurship work that we do. We have, in addition to the female focus, we also have a greenhouse accelerator program that helps small businesses in the startup space in the natural foods area.
Yeah.
And I was telling them about all these programs, and they said what you said. The question was posed to me, which you've never been posed before: why do you stay in a big organization like this? You know, you're obviously interested in healthier eating, you're interested in entrepreneurial work. And I had a moment of realization standing there, and I went, you know why I stay? Because I can make more of a difference in a large company like this with all the resources I have and the support I have from senior leadership, from Ramon LaGuarta, our CEO, to Stephen Williams, our CEO in FritoLay. Every single one of them say yes every time I ask them, can I do this? Can we try this? Can we lead in here? Can we spend more money? Every single time. So the resources I have at my disposal to harness are incredible. I could never do what I do in a smaller startup world. And I think it's not about we do this and they do this. I think it's about the harmonization of us. The startup world does all these amazing things. We do something different, but also driven by a similar desire. Look at the magic we can have when we come together. So I just count myself lucky every day that I have these wonderful resources, these people, these finances, this expert knowledge that can help to fuel these smaller founders and help them grow their businesses. And I always say, you know, when women rise, we all rise. It's not about women and men, it's about us all together.
Absolutely. Yes. And as you know, on one of the things that I'm hoping to accomplish by raising visibility of women and kind of getting our voices out there a little bit more, women leaders, is the naturals industry. Our superpower is education and innovation. And we know we can make the most amazing healthy foods on the planet. However, we've created a culture where financially we leave a lot of people out of the mix. And what I love hearing about the efforts that are happening at these multinationals is you guys are building the bridge kind of backwards, right? So the naturals industry is over here. I think they're starting to hear it. They're slowly moving this way. It's how many $7 kombuchas do we need? And on this end, we're moving people from fried foods to baked foods to whatever, you know, healthy ingredients to functional. Like as we come together, we're working to help all of these families, most of them families of color who don't have the education, are not marketed to because nobody's paying attention to them if they're a particular financial space. So I love to hear that, okay, there's an organization, granted it's the Titanic or it's a huge vessel, right? And so the turning it takes longer, but the resources there, and it's fantastic. I love it. It's great.
And Diana, we've obviously talked a few times now because I love what you're saying, because that's exactly one of the Jedi mind tricks we have, is that, and again, it was probably 6 to 9 months into the role where I realized, oh goodness, hang on a second here now. We can affect massive change. And I truly mean that in how Americans snack. Now we can choose to take that in a certain direction or not. For a long time, I think, Diana, there was a concern with organizations like ours, and having worked in other CPGs, I saw the same, that it was very hard to do the mainstream snacking, drinking, breakfast, whatever, and the healthier. And I think, no, it's actually all part of a journey. And it's so incumbent on us to make sure that we're meeting consumers here and now, but also helping guide them into the future.
Yes.
And I couldn't agree more. Having gone to Expo West for many years and seeing amazing innovations, but incredibly costly innovations that maybe if you lived in Cali and you could afford that to drink, buy kale juice all day long, but I know we definitely couldn't. And what I think is so exciting is how we can start to make healthier snacking more accessible to millions and millions of Americans, and make it more available and more, from a cost perspective, make it more accessible. And I think I've told you before, one of our fastest growing customers is Dollar General. And, you know, there's an amazing insights lead there called Angela. Angela is one of the brightest women I've ever worked with. And Angela talks about her shoppers intimately, and she knows them intimately. And she is as engaged in the healthier snacking agenda as our Whole Foods.
Really?
But her angle is, my shoppers want to eat better because they can't afford to be unwell.
Yeah.
So whilst the shoppers in Whole Foods may be saying, I need more kale juice because I know that kale is really good for me, the shopper in Dollar General is going, I can't afford to be unwell, particularly in this country. So both have needs for healthier eating and healthier snacking. And I think we can help bridge that gap. And it's, the onus is on us. And I'm proud to say we can do that. But I also take that super seriously, Diana. Like I take that opportunity and how fast we can get there very seriously, because the faster I can get more accessible, more affordable, healthier snacks into Dollar General, the more good that we are doing and the more we are helping. And it's not at all it's not in a saintly manner at all. It's not like we're setting ourselves up to save the world with what we do. We're very on the ground, we're very humble, but at the same time, there is, as you said, an enormous opportunity in front of us, and we can take the lead on that. And one of the other things we're doing from a sustainable packaging perspective is, which sits on my team, that's a massive opportunity as well. If we can lead the industry in bringing sustainable packaging to our snacking category, that's massive. And we know it's up to us to do it because we're the biggest. So we take it super seriously. It's massively high on our agenda, and you have a team of warriors internally who do everything they can night and day to make that happen. Because if we can move the industry, wow, just watch what happens and the change that can come. So
absolutely,
really big opportunities in our size and our resource, but doing it in a very humble way.
Well, you talk about the health component, and I always get emotional when I think of those, like to hear something like we need to eat healthier because we can't afford to get ill is at one side makes me furious, and on the other side makes me very sad. But to have that visible so that everybody can hear it, I think is really important as if we're working on it, helping everybody become healthy. Let's be clear on who everybody is.
Exactly.
But when we're talking about health, let's talk about COVID and implications on business and households right now. You talked a little about Stacy's Rise project, a small business, innovative products, innovative brands. What sort of functional impact or financial constraints are you seeing on these business owners right now? And are you seeing it impacting women, businesses of color more than non?
Yes, yeah. I mean, wow, what a year. And it's almost hard. I sort of, Dan, I don't even know the words to describe this year, because I also think it's a very personal journey, depending on how people have been impacted financially, personally, health-wise, etc. So I just think it's so important that we acknowledge the year has been very challenging and yet very different for everybody as they try and navigate through it. From what we've learned from the work that we've been doing, we've had to pivot the Rise program very fast, because we realized through our partners at Hello Alice that small business owners, and women in particular, were being disproportionately impacted. It's hard to run a small business, particularly when you're small scale, you're only getting up and running. When all of a sudden it's even harder to access production facilities.
Yes.
Can't talk to a buyer, nobody's talking to you, can't meet people in person. A lot of the things that were fundamental to growing a small business all of a sudden stopped, and they didn't have the backup, they didn't have the financial security or the scale to rely on that for a few months. So we realized very quickly they needed cash, and we increased the amounts that we were giving. We went from 5 founders to 15, which in itself may not seem huge, but for us was obviously a big jump in the program. And we also increased the focus on our online resources for Woman Made and Rise through Hello Alice, so that we were getting more and more information out there about the resources that were available to help carry you through. What we also did then, we always have had on Stacy's a focus on diversity. So we have clear criteria that X% of our finalists must be women of colour, that they must be from diverse backgrounds, etc., and how they decide to show up is very important to us. But through the racial conversations and challenges that we've seen over the summer period, which are, as we all know, nothing new, they've just been exponentially highlighted because of all of the incidents that have happened, we decided we needed to do more there. So we added another 15 grants for Black female founders. We found the most amazing group of women. Oh, they're amazing, and their brands and their products are amazing. And what we've done there is we've tailored the program through another amazing partner. We just find all these super cool partners. So Kamika Smith is the owner of the Boss Network, and she has an organization that focuses specifically on Black female founders. So Kamika is going to run all the mentoring for those 15 because she understands better than anybody the challenges and needs of the Black female founder. So there are a few examples of, I guess, how we've shown up knowing how challenging it's been and how we're trying to lean in and do even more. The other thing I'd say we've done, Dan, is we've pivoted quite a bit the content series. So we do a webinar series, which is linked to our expertise angle that I mentioned.
Yes.
And we've been clear on that this year. A lot of it is focused on the channels that are up and running. So, for example, e-commerce. E-commerce is doing brilliantly at the moment. The penetration of online shopping has just gone exponentially grown in the US, which was actually quite behind other markets globally. And we've been helping and supporting the women to improve their e-commerce visibility, their websites, their click-throughs, their understanding of how you use an Amazon or an Instacart, where relevant, etc., and they've seen huge growth in that area of their business. So we've tried to make sure we tailor the program to meet the challenges that they're having at the moment, and in our little way, just hopefully help them keep the lights on over these difficult few months.
I love that, because as you and I have discussed, and so many people are discussing, this is not just you and I being brilliant together, but there's people across the world that are talking about this. Black women, Latina women, Native First Tribe women, people with disabilities, I think that's another group of people that aren't really beyond invisible right now. They're not feeling heard, they're not feeling supported. And I know that for you, and is it for Frito-Lay as well? Like that there's something that it feels like it from what you're saying, like this is something that you can do. This is how you can help. And it's important to you to support families and businesses by innovation, business support. Maybe talk about that for a second.
Yeah, it's hugely important. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that even in today's society, women still bear the disproportionate amount of the duties within, whether it be within a traditional family setup of 2.2 kids or whatever, whether it be caring for elderly parents and helping in your community. It's just fact. It's not an emotional thing. It's just fact. Women tend to bear more of those responsibilities even today. So when you then go into the situation you and I started talking about quarantine and no schools and not being able to access elderly relations, or in minority communities or communities that are socially and economically deprived, the impact is so much greater. And these women, every group that you've just listed and more, have had to bear the brunt of that even more. And that's something we are on the programs and also as a company incredibly aware of. So a lot of our foundation money has been channeled into those areas. A lot of our foundation money has been channeled into those communities, and particularly into supporting women in those communities who we know need that support even more than ever. So it's a double down. It's also double down for us on our employee group. So we are incredibly conscious of the role that women play within our employees and how they also need disproportionate support at the moment. So I want to give you one small example of an amazing initiative. We have a lot of senior women in our sales organization, which we're beyond proud of. And some of these, we call them our regional vice presidents. They look after sales force, of thousands of people. And they've brought in a number of key initiatives to support the women on their teams. whether it be double jobbing, whether it be double jobbing as in job sharing, whether it be taking some time out, whether it be changing your hours, but not just leaving it to you to flex, but actually saying, okay, so from the hours of 10 to 4, you're not going to work because you're going to work early morning and late evening, whatever works for you. We will make sure you're backfilled. We will make sure there's somebody there to help you out. So it's not just nice words like, well, of course we support flexible working, or of course you can do what you want, but it's actually putting resources in the right places to support it, because we highly value the female population, our sales teams, and we don't want to lose that over this time. So it gladdens my heart when I see some of the things that the team are doing, going above and beyond to make sure that we're supporting the women in our team and in our organization. And I think that pays back, because when you feel your organization is helping you like that, then it inspires women like me to go, well, then how do I bring that into the community? You know, how do we lean in and give that support into the community as well? So there's a lot of great initiatives going on both ways.
Excellent. Well, our time is almost up. I want to be sensitive of your time, but there are 3 last questions I'd like to ask you. That aside from, can we go have a drink?
I know, very soon, hopefully, very soon.
I wonder if there is, you've shared so much fun facts about Frito-Lay that I think people outside of Frito-Lay probably aren't aware of, but I always like to ask our guests, is there some sort of interesting historical factoid or something that somebody could share, did you know this about Frito-Lay, or about a specific product, or about anything that you'd like to share with people that could just be a fun bow on your the Frito-Lay conversation?
Yeah, I want to take it to a wider PepsiCo fact, because when you asked me this question and we thought about it, I thought there's a lady who was the CEO or previous CEO of PepsiCo, Indra Nooyi, and her story is fascinating. And I just think it's a lovely story in light of what we're talking about this morning and supporting women. So she was born in India. She had 1 sister. Her mom never worked because that wasn't the done thing, but her mother encouraged her and her sister hugely. And Indra made her way to the US, and she used to tell us the story of her first interview. I think she had to borrow a suit, or she went to a secondhand store to buy a suit, and the suit, the trousers only stopped at her ankles, and that wasn't in vogue in those days. It might be now, but it's not then. And she didn't get the job interview. And she tells the story of how she said to her professor at college, I put the suit on and I thought this is what Westerners did. And he said to her, wear what you're comfortable in. And she wore a sari for her next interview, and she got the job. And I just think it's a lovely reminder of this idea of being yourself and being your authentic self. We talk about that in very lofty tones these days, but for me, that's a lovely reminder. And the other one she tells all the time is, as she grew older, her mother came to live with her and help her raise her daughters. And the day she got appointed CEO for Pepsi, she came running home, probably chauffeur driven home when you become the CEO. But anyway, she came home and her mom was there making the dinner. And she said, Mom, I've got some great news. And her mother's like, we've no milk. I don't care what your great news is. Go get the milk and then you can come back and tell me. So she said, I had to go get the milk. And then I came back and told her, Mom, I've just been made CEO of Pepsi. And the mom said, well, that's great. But, in this house, you're a mother, a daughter, and a wife. And then you're the CEO.
Oh.
So I just love those little anecdotes about, real women and the things that you face into. And no matter how successful you are, there's still a grounding there. And I think it's so important, Diana. People often get caught up in roles and titles, and at the end of the day, I always think of myself, I'm just a woman going through what every other woman is going through, trials and tribulations, etc. And if I can show up as human as I can, I hope that will help other women feel, you can do the same.
That's that. Yes. I love it. How are you keeping yourself sane and centered these days?
I love that question. With 2 crazy little boys, I maybe they're the ones keeping me sane and centered and keeping up with them. That's probably a big part of it. I think the other piece for me is just engaging in areas that stimulate me. I mean, I've found a lot more interesting people to read about. I have to say, Glennon Doyle, I don't know if you've read her amazing Untamed book. Oh my goodness, Diana, you'll fall in love with it. It's just I've bought it for so many people this year. She published it early in the year, just before COVID. And it's a remarkable book. It's a remarkable book for women, but it's also a remarkable book for men.
Oh.
And I just would encourage everybody and anybody to read it. It's one of those books that you never want to close, but at the same time, you could open every time and read a page and you get something from it. So Glennon Doyle Untamed, and I follow her now on Instagram, and she's an incredibly positive influence, I feel. I also love Trevor Noah, so I watch the
Me too.
Daily Show every night, and I just think he's a great guy, and my kids love him. My kids have this book, which we got them around the time of everything erupting, the racial unrest, and trying to explain to them as Irish kids growing up in the US what this means and what we all have to do. And we got this book all about heroes, men and women who are heroes. And Trevor's in the book as a hero from South Africa who had a challenging upbringing, and look where he is today. So the boys, sometimes Trevor veers off a little bit on the language, so we have to sort of beep it out. But the boys and I love to watch Trevor every so often. So yeah, I just, you find your people, you find your influences, and you try and just get the balance right. And above and beyond, just realize how incredibly fortunate we are to be safe and healthy, and able to do the things that you and I have just talked about in the last hour. So that's what keeps me going.
Tell me, Ciara, how do you want people to connect with you if they're interested in talking about any of these initiatives further? Is LinkedIn the best way?
It is. I love LinkedIn. I use it a lot. I've used it for years and years, and I'm using it even more at the moment to start wonderful conversations with people. So if anybody wants to join our rally cry, part of our team, become one of our warriors, we're always trying to integrate and connect and just build our tribe to help more and more women.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ciara. I expressed yesterday my absolute emotional. I tried to talk emotionally a little bit. It's hard to translate, but really great that I got to have this time with you. I look forward to our future conversations, and I hope you had fun.
Thank you so much, Dan. I'm really honored and humbled to be able to come along, and I appreciate you giving the time to this amazing program, to the amazing people who work on it, and in particular to sort of getting the story of our female founders out there. And we always have so much fun when you and I talk.
This episode is sponsored by Retail Voodoo, a creative marketing firm specializing in growing, fixing, and reinventing brands in the food, beverage, wellness, and fitness industries. If your naturals brand is in need of positioning, package design, or marketing activation, we're here to help. You can find more information at retail-voodoo.com. And so there you go. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to this channel and share with your network. Until next time, be well and do gooder.